Welcome to the Jets UK podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Andres Groves, and I'm joined by one of my co-hosts, David Wyatt-Hupton, and a special guest, Andrew Golden. Andrew, how are you doing today?
Doing awesome. Very happy to be back on this show. Very happy to be speaking to you, Andres and David. Very excited to break down this draft we got coming in a few days.
Absolutely. David, finally draft week, eh?
Oh, I'm so pumped. I'm so bored of these prospects. And I can't wait to get excited about the ones we draft and pretend
So
I
bored of these prospects.
hate all the ones that we don't draft. I can't wait for it.
Yeah, it's just been such a long slog since we've been out of contention. It's just what happens, isn't it? So we are almost there, and we finally. And I think it's also that it's been so unpredictable, so you can't really get used to say, okay, I think we'll definitely get this person coming to us. And last year we knew Zach, it was going to go Trevor, and then we knew it was going to be Zach. So this year it's like we're at 4, we're right up there, but yet we still don't know. It's still a mystery even at that, because there's just nobody locked in even at number 1. So yeah, it's a really intriguing draft, even though it is. I think you've said it's a bit bored. You're bored of the prospects, but I think the draft is quite interesting because it's like so unpredictable. We just don't know where it's going to go. So yeah, on this week we're going to have a bunch of different segments. We're going to be going through some do's and some nightmare and dream scenarios. So what we'll do is we're basically going to be, I'll kick off kind of the top, what happens at the top, and then we kind of go from there, and then we'll kind of piggyback. So one of us, I'll kick it to David, and he kicks it to Andrew, and then we kind of piggyback what could be the best case scenario and then the worst case scenario through the first 2 rounds, or we can maybe look through into the third round as well. Then we'll also do draft do's and don'ts for the Jets. So basically a few kind of things that we'd like to see and not like to see from the Jets this weekend at the draft. And then we'll finish off with our draft predictions. But before that, we'll kick off into a little bit of news. Okay, so the main news this week, really relating Jets, kind of Jets related, just because we're so linked with the guy, is Deebo Samuel putting in that trade request. And obviously, with how we were with Tyreek Hill and everyone else, knowing that we need receivers, we are, one of the favourites to maybe potentially go for him if the 49ers want to trade. Andrew, what are your feelings generally about the potential to trade him, and what's the kind of package you're looking at, and would you prefer to give up for him potentially?
Yeah, Deebo's interesting because he's a fantastic player. I don't think anyone's denying that. I don't think anyone's arguing against his talent or his abilities or what he would add to the receiver room. The thing that's a little interesting with this for me in particular is a lot of people are expecting, at least from a Jets perspective, to get a similar version of Deebo Samuel to what the 49ers have been using. And there's a reason to expect that. But the whole reason Deebo wants to be traded is because he doesn't want to be used like a running back or used in the same sort of, heavy touch, heavy workload capacity that isn't as a traditional wide receiver. So I think if you're trading for him, expecting him to be the guy that's getting carries out of the backfield and you're throwing 20 screen passes to a game, I think you're going to be disappointed because I don't think that's what he wants. If you're wanting to add him to be another piece in your receiving core, that's going to be good at creating plays over the middle, getting yards after the catch, probably doing a little more down the field than maybe even I've given him credit for. I think there's something there. However, Deebo Samuel has made his money with the plays that he's made in space and the ability, his versatility to be lined up in the backfield and take carries and things like that. It's part of what makes him so good. So if he's going to be devaluing himself because he wants to preserve his longevity, I completely understand that. As looking at him as a player, it makes total sense for his body and his career. But for the Jets, we're going to be giving a bunch of money to a guy to do something that wasn't his forte. We're going to be giving a bunch of money to him as kind of a projection saying, okay, you were more of this gadget player. You did some work down the field. You were pretty good at it. But now we're going to transition you into this full-time outside threat wide receiver that you're betting on Deebo's talent a lot. And so because you're doing that, and because there isn't the all-star wide receivers in this draft class to where even the ones that I really like, the ones you're going to be taking 10th overall, it's still going to be reaching a little bit. It kind of lines up in a way for me where I say offer the 10th overall pick.
Yeah.
And I'm not offering anything else. I'm not putting any other picks. I'm not adding any picks for next year. I'm not 10, and that's it. If the 10th overall pick doesn't get this done, I take a receiver at 10 and move on. If 10th overall pick does it, then I figure it as saying, okay, I'm going to spend the 10th pick on Deebo, and that would be just like I'd be spending it on a wide receiver. Yes, you have to give him the contract on top of that the Jets know that ahead of time. I wouldn't go past 10 just because I'm worried about how Deebo is going to fit in an offense that's going to use him differently, and that's what he wants. If he's getting out, it'll probably be to a team that's going to use him differently.
Yeah, I'm with you on the value generally. I do feel that there's a potential for Mike LaFleur to be able to kind of use him in a way that he was used similar before he transitioned to this kind of wide back role that he coined at the end of the last season. I think he was a pretty productive player. Before that, obviously, he became another notch above. He was a superstar once he became that in that role with combining the two abilities. I do think Mike LaFleur is somebody who could basically get the best out of him in whatever role he would be comfortable in, and have that dialogue with him in terms of his usage. David, what's your thoughts on the Deebo situation and potential value for him?
Yeah, I think I largely agree with Andrew in what he's saying. My point with Deebo is how many touches does he want to reduce? So, he was at 136 touches last year. He had 59 carries. Does he want to reduce that to 20, 25 carries, or does he want to go down to where he was, 8 carries, 1 or 2 per game? And that changes the valuation of him quite significantly, depending on what that looks like. And that's something the Jets need to know before they decide to trade for him. I wouldn't offer more than the 10th. I think, I'm pretty keen to add a receiver at number 10. That's my preference. It has been for a while.
Yeah.
So if we can add Deebo Samuel, and I'm not too worried about the contract. You at some point the Jets are going to have to pay stars, and if Deebo they think he's a star, then pay him the money. It doesn't matter. You've still got Zach Wilson on his rookie deal for another few years. So I know some people think, oh, that's not the time to be paying this guy, but I think it's a pretty good time to be paying a wide receiver $25 million or whatever it's going to cost to take him. I like Deebo. You look at his stats, his receiving stats before they started using him as a rusher were pretty good. I do trust LaFleur to put him in the right spots to make plays for us. He got the ball to Elijah in good situations last year, so we can do the same with Deebo. But I'm not going to mortgage the future on it. The Jets have too many holes to say to San Fran, name your price, we'll give you a first this year, a second, and second. I don't want to get into that kind of situation. But if I'm going to take a Jameson Williams or a Chris Olave at number 10, I'll happily trade that to San Francisco and say, listen, the 10th pick's a good deal for you guys, good deal for us guys. Let's get it done. I'm interested to see how it happens. There's more rumors over the last 24 hours that the Jets are all in. I think was the quote from league execs.
It's Tony Pauline was saying about.
So don't worry about that. Then that's a false.
Exactly.
So the Jets haven't called.
No, exactly. I think it's interesting because I think. You talk about the money you would pay for someone compared to picking a draft pick, and hoping they work out to be as good as Samuel. So it's kind of that. It's really much like, if Samuel doesn't want to be there, this gives the 49ers a potentially chance to just, get another good receiver, paying less money. And if he doesn't, like I said, if he's not interested in signing, then this gives them the best out potentially for them. And I think it might happen on the clock if they get things lined up. If the receiver that they are interested in replacing him with, or sort of kind of taking his place in the starting lineup is there, that's when the Jets can go, right, the player that you want is there. Are we, is the deal? Yeah, and then that's where it goes. So it could happen on the clock, and I'm pretty much I'm half expecting at this point. In a way, I'm very happy with the receivers, any of the receivers that I talked about at the top. As well, so I'm pretty much as long as they get the 4th pick right, which is edge rusher, and a receiver, whether it be Deebo or the draft kids, I'm pretty happy. Kind of wrapping up round 1 with that. So yeah, it's an interesting conversation. We'll see what happens in the next coming days. If anything happens before the draft, I think it's probably going to happen on draft night if it does, because like I said, it probably depends on how the board falls.
Can it happen on draft? I'm just thinking out loud here with medically he's had a few injuries in the last 2 years. I mean, he started 5 games last year, 11 games the year before. What's the situation around medicals there in terms of? I mean, the Jets are going to want to give him a physical before they trade for him, surely. So can that happen on draft night? Like, I don't know, Andrew. You were talking about this, I think, a week or so ago.
Yeah, we were talking about this at our Jets X Factor group chat, where any physical that's going to happen would have to basically happen now if he were to be traded before the draft. And teams are going to want to make sure that he passes that physical or doesn't pass that physical with enough time before the draft happens so that any picks that they would be trading, which would likely be 2022 draft picks, have time to wait and see how that physical goes. Because if you trade over a pick from the 49ers sense, they want to make sure this goes this way too. Because if you're trading over a pick and you get to the point where a physical happens and you do it without enough time in between the draft to where you do the trade, then the draft happens, then the physical happens, and Deebo fails his physical. Now the trade gets voided, but you've already made those picks because the draft already went through. So I think he is going to be traded if he is going to be traded by Wednesday.
Okay.
Because I don't think a team is going to want to go into the draft, like we're saying, Jets in particular, do we draft someone at 10 or do we use 10 to trade for Deebo? They're not going to want to use 10 to trade for Deebo unless they know he's going to pass that physical. And so they're going to need to get the trade done as early as possible to get him flied out, get him taking that physical so that if it fails, it'll void the trade before the draft happens.
Gotcha. That is quite illuminating, actually. Yeah, in terms of the timescale for these things. So we could be hearing things imminently on that front with Deebo. But yeah, it's interesting. Like I said, we'll see how that works out over the next couple of days and leading up to the draft. But yeah, I'm pretty relaxed about that 10 position if they want to go that way. I think the other thing is you would say go for 10 rather than 38, 38, 35, 38, because for me, I've been saying, I think me and David agree on this, is that the value difference between, say, the 10th pick and the 40th pick is not huge, and you'd rather have two shots where we've got them in the second rather than kind of using up both of them and only having the 10th pick and relying on moving back. Are you of a similar mind?
I'm actually in a different camp than you guys.
Okay.
And not that I disagree, because I completely understand what you're saying. You're 100% right. The depth and the meat of this draft class is definitely after the top and within that middle range.
Yeah.
But I kind of view it from the aspect of you have your top picks. You have your handful of top picks at the top of the draft. You know what positions you have to target with those top picks. So we're all in agreement, edge rusher at 4.
Yes.
After that, we're thinking wide receiver at 10. So you got other positions at 35 and 38, specifically safety and defensive tackle, possibly linebacker, that are really important positions we're likely to use those 2 second-round picks on. So I was talking about this a couple of days ago when I was recording Oklahoma Drill, actually. We just had the last part of our position previews, linebacker, cornerback, and safety went up this morning, so you can catch the rest of this there after you get done listening to this if you want to. But I was talking about the Jets' second-round picks at 35 and 38.
Yeah.
One of them is likely to be used on a safety. We all understand that because it's one of their biggest last remaining needs. I would rather, if we start to see a slip, use those picks. And this is actually a good transition if you want to go right into do's and don'ts, because this was one of my draft do's.
Yeah.
Be aggressive to get the players you want.
Okay.
Be aggressive to get the players that fit your scheme and make the most sense. That would be drastically better for the Jets than they would other places. So if Lewis Cine falls past 25, I'm calling every team that's still in the first round and offering, if it takes 35 and 38, which I'm not even sure that it would. I think you could do a package of maybe 35 and 69 or 35 and 111 and something next year. I want to go up and get a guy that I know is going to be a star versus a guy that I think will be pretty good. Where, in my opinion, Lewis Cine by himself is better than Jaquan Brisker and whatever other second round pick you would want to throw in when I'm looking at impact for the team and impact for the defense. So I'm in the camp of, in a draft class that, considering the Jets do have other picks, and it's not like this would be, let's just give every pick we have after the first round and then do nothing. I think they have the ammo and the willingness to be aggressive to go get those impact players, because I think they're just going to be better overall. And sometimes the quantity over quality aspect is, a good one, but the Jets are so devoid of elite talent. They need stars. And I think sometimes you got to make moves like we're saying for Deebo. If we're going to be willing to add the elite talent for Deebo and pay him all that money, why not trade up for a player who's got even more talent?
Yeah, I'm with you. And if you've got a feeling like that for Scene, hopefully maybe it works out the same
I love
as
the
Joker
kid.
last year, right? We had a feeling it didn't work out. He slipped past us the medical stuff, but he's been a really good player for Cleveland in his rookie year. So if you've got a feeling for Scene like that, then I really like Scene as well. David, what's your thoughts on that idea for moving up into the first round for someone like
Yeah,
Scene?
I love aggressiveness. I love GMs that know what they want and they go out and get it. We saw that with AVT last year. Joe Douglas identified him, said this is the guy that's going to run perfectly in our scheme. I'm going to go up and get him, and that's worked out pretty well in year one, and he's only going to get better. So, I love Scene as well. I think he's a fantastic prospect. I think he fits our system perfectly. It'll help on that back end with Whitehead and Scene. That would be a pretty dynamic safety
Could be the
duo.
best safety tandem in the NFL
Could
in
be
2 years.
easily.
Yeah.
Like that's the type of talent that we would have on the back end.
It's
So I'm,
exciting.
I'm all for it. I love aggressiveness and
Yeah.
like you say, it's not always about the quantity of picks. We do need that top end talent. We've got a lot of players and we've still got many draft picks that we can move down and pick up more if we wanted to.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for a 10-player draft this year. I'm looking for 4 players that will come in straight away, make an impact on this offense, defense, just get us some more wins, and I think that's a good way to go about it.
Yeah. I think that we can always say, we could add to the positions, but the further down the draft, you're not adding your star quality. You're kind of adding on the tail end of that position group rather than headlining and adding to the top of that position group. So, as much as we obviously feel there's stars down the board, and we always get kind of, oh, this player is going to be a star and he's going to be in the fifth round, it doesn't normally work out. So. I think it's go get the guys who are really going to kind of make go straight into the starting lineup, and I'm going to make a real difference in year one and onwards. So yeah, I'm with you on that aggressiveness for sure. As you jumped into the do's and don'ts, yeah, we'll jump into that. So yours was obviously be aggressive and move up. David, what's your do for the Jets for the draft weekend?
I think I can't even remember what I said to you now before because I was ready for my don'ts.
Yes,
So I
because you
kinda forgot.
you went through a list of don'ts because you're
I
like,
went through a
don't
lot.
do this,
We're
don't
so
do this.
used to being negative as
Of
Jets
course.
fans
I
that we
gave you
can't handle even doing something right.
I said, can I have multiple don'ts instead of a do's? So my do, and it may seem obvious, but kind of you spend 10 minutes on Twitter and you'll see this is not accepted amongst the entire Jets fan base. But if Kayvon Thibodeau falls to you at number 4, take that man. Just pick him.
Yep.
Don't overthink it. Don't get into this. What's his character like? What's it? Rich Samini actually put out a positive yesterday and said the feeling inside the building is that they're not overly concerned about his character. It's not, he's cocky, but who wants to draft an edge rusher in the top 5 who doesn't believe in his own talent? I mean, I don't want to go into the building with Kayvon going, oh, I might be okay, or I might be a good player. I want that guy coming in saying, I'm the best player in this draft, and I'm going to show the other 3 teams who passed me why they shouldn't have passed me. So I think, that it's an obvious, in my mind, it's an obvious do, but it's not always in everyone's mind. A lot of people are scared of him. A lot of people think he's got that bus factor.
No.
I've heard Vernon Golston, which doesn't make any sense
it's
to me.
silly. It's silly. But the funny thing with me is I get, from his personality, I get Jamal Adams vibes a little bit, but that Jamal Adams has never been an off the field problem. He's just, he's just a bit annoying, especially the way it worked out with us, and that's why we have that back and forth with him as well. But I think from a personality, I think he's got that same intensity and the same, I think that's the vibe I got when I was listening to him a little bit, and I don't think that's a bad thing. He's a different person, so it could go a different way. But that was just the vibes, and that could be fine. I mean, I think in a Salah situation with the new setup, that could be positive, right? I think with the last setup, Jamal Adams didn't work out with the way it was set up, and that's just what it was. But I think there's nothing wrong with that personality at all. My do is I say target linebacker in the second. If I like the quality of linebackers there, whether it be Nakobe Dean to Falls or whether it's Muma. You can drop back a little bit and get him, whatever you want. I like the value of linebacker at that role, and I don't really care what the kind of beat reporters and other people are saying that they love what they got. Look, I think Quincy Williams is a great story, and I think he's a good squad player, person who can come in with a lot of energy. I think you need to get someone who's going to be really sound and potentially take over for CJ in a year or two when we move on from CJ. So I think they really got to look ahead. They've said it before, this year's luxury is next year's problem. I think that applies to multiple positions, and linebacker is one of them. If they feel they got some starters, well, maybe next year might be different. So I really want them to go linebacker. I'll let you go with your got a list of them, David. I'll let you fire off your don't first before I go to Andrew. What's your don't for the New York Jets at the draft?
I mean, I'm just all on that. Don't draft an offensive lineman in the top 10. Just don't do it.
We're all
Just
there.
don't
I think
do
we're
it,
all there
man.
on that one.
I'm so worried.
Cosign.
Especially as Matt's not here. Matt's the only one who's really been on the. He's okay with Aquanu over a few people, but I think I think we love Aquanu, but yeah, I agree with you. Just the insurance package is
I
not
don't even
worth
feel like
doing
I
at
need to
that
say
level.
anymore. Like I just feel as though we're not in this place, and Andrew actually wrote on Jets X Factor about it. It's not that we don't like the players. It's not like I don't like I don't like Ekwonu. I think he's a fine player. I don't love him as much as most people do. I don't see him as this can't miss prospect that some people are talking about him as. But
No,
he's a very good
me
prospect.
either.
But why draft for depth right now? I mean, there's so many ways you can go. There's so many holes that we've got on this roster. Like, you don't need to draft for depth. I mean, Joe Douglas, offensive line guru, find someone in the 2nd to 5th round, somewhere around there. It's very uncommon that you will look at NFL starting offensive lines and see 5 first-round talents or 4 first-round talents and a prize free agent. I started looking around them, and most of them have a 3 to 6th round prospect on there who does a fine job. Like, they will do a fine job. And I've still got faith in Becton. I still like Fant. I think Fant's a good player. I like him a lot more than a lot of people do. So I'm all for taking an offensive tackle. Just don't take one in the top 10.
Yeah, I like some of the prospects in the middle rounds as potential kind of people who could be there for the future if Fant walks next year. If there is issues with Becton's health and going forward, I think there needs to be some sort of insurance package, but don't pay that premium in the top rounds. I mean, it's just too much. But I said this to you on the text message, David. I do think if KT's not there, you said that you think Jermaine Johnson would also be above the board on their board. I'm just nervous that they're gonna, if KT's gone, then and Aquanu's there, they're gonna go with him and maybe look to try and get Jermaine Johnson at 10, which I don't think is gonna work out too well for them if they do that. But yeah, I think we're all in line that we just hopefully Thibodeau's there for that. You smash you hand that card in straight away, and then we move on to the next part of the draft. Andrew, what's your don't for the Jets in the draft?
Yeah, well, I agree with David. Like he was saying about offensive linemen, I had it written down as don't worry about the future before worrying about the present. And I think that's what you're doing when you draft an offensive lineman in the first round, is you're trying to fix a problem that hasn't shown itself to be a problem yet. And in the event that good things happen and Becton and Fant both play well, then now you have a 4th overall pick that you're going to have to figure out what to do with. And you're not going to get that same sort of return back in a trade regardless. So I agree from there. After that, I think they can't just draft one singular wide receiver. I think the depth at the receiver position is just severely lacking. And even if they take a receiver 10th overall, I would seriously look into the 4th or 5th round, one of those last handful of picks, and adding another piece for depth. You can just fill in another role in the depth chart, because you can never have too many good receivers. You can never have too many receivers, period. We all want Zach Wilson to succeed in year 2, and none of us wants to see a repeat of the Buffalo game where he's throwing to street free agents and hoping for the best against a really good defense. So I would definitely be interested in adding another receiver. I'd also consider, which I had as my other do for the draft, trading for a veteran with one of those later picks, even if it is a receiver. I'm not quite sure, who's going to be available or what spot, or make any official predictions, but get talent as much as you can, even if that means acquiring a veteran through a trade. The Jets have had some really good veterans through trades in the draft over the last handful of years. That's how they got Chris Ivory. It's how they got Brandon Marshall. I think this could be another avenue to add talent to the team that maybe people aren't anticipating.
No, I think it's definitely the way to go to kind of maximize the positions that they're targeting, make sure that you get the value with that the wide receiver core. My don't trade back too much. So it's kind of almost like yours, Andrew, with the opposite. Be aggressive, and specifically from 10. If there is any reason why they want to drop back, I think that the talent does cut off a little bit. in terms of that. There's some premium players maybe still in the 10 to 15 to 16, 17 market. I think you can still do that maybe if there's interest in it. But I think generally the philosophy is to trade up, get the best players, and do that. So yeah, don't trade back too much. Trade forward, I guess. So it's similar to yours. So yeah, I think for that we'll wrap up the do's and don'ts, and we'll head over to our kind of draft nightmares and dreams. Okay, so joining us for the rest of the show is our other co-host, one of our other co-hosts, Matthew Merrett. Matt, how are you doing today?
Not too bad. Sorry, I'm late. I had work emergencies. I've just about recovered from Chelsea on the weekend. They put us through the ringer.
Another Chelsea update every week. Honestly, it is truly.
No one cares.
It is truly a tradition. But we're jumping straight into the kind of nightmare and dream scenarios for the Jets. So what I'm going to do is I'll just list off the initial bit of information, and then we'll jump through each scenario and each pick through each of us. So so the first one is in the nightmare one is KT. Kayvon Thibodeau goes number 2 to the Detroit Lions. So that kicks off. So at 4, Matt, what are you doing? What would be the nightmare scenario now that that's kind of off the board? What would be? So
we're saying scenario? it goes Hutch, Thibodeau, and then Houston take Ekwonu.
Yeah, let's do that for your sake. Because you'll be too happy with that one otherwise.
I think in that so it's obviously. And Adam Schefter just did a tweet saying that no one is having any success trying to trade down, and I think you are kind of left in a position where you're picking the rest. I think for me the nightmare would be a defensive back, whether it's Stingley, Sauce, or Hamilton. I just think in the value in Robert Saleh's scheme and the players that we already have on the roster, taking someone at 4 when you're really looking for that headliner, that difference maker, that guy who's going to really impact 17 games a season, and hopefully more. We all hope for more than 17 games a season. I think I will struggle to get on board with that pick. And I think you're looking at cornerbacks who I don't think either of these cornerbacks are better than Horn or Surtain last year. I don't think they're better than Okudah the year before. So there will be a lack of excitement from me if we see that at 4, and I think that goes firmly within the realms of realism. We're not quite going to Trevor Penning at 4 levels of nightmare, but within what's realistic, I think that would be it for me.
That's interesting. It's funny how this can work out with us doing kind of a non-consensus one. It's going to be some of us are going to actually like some of the scenarios. It's not going to be a true nightmare or dream, but I think it's interesting to see kind of some of the ways things could work out on draft night. And Andrew, so going off then, so a defensive back goes off there. What's the next step where there's going to be a nightmare draft out at pick 10? Realistically, right?
Realistically for me, pick 10, assuming they go defensive back at 4, would be to completely ignore edge rusher entirely and to go wide receiver, but not the wide receiver that I would necessarily be comfortable with. So nightmare scenario for me is Drake London at 10.
Okay, Drake London. Fair enough. I pretty much I'm happy with Drake London as an option if they're happy with him. So I don't know, but I do agree with you that missing out on edge rusher is I just can't see missing out on edge rusher and the top of the draft and leaving it to later on, because like we talked about earlier, we want to add someone to the top of the room in terms of quality, not put them on the tail end or add them into the mix. We want to add a really headliner at that position to pair with Carl Lawson and see where he is. So I think that the nightmare scenario is any scenario that basically leaves us with those 2 picks without an edge rusher. And I think if in this scenario, if KT goes, if they don't go Jermaine Johnson, this is the whole point. He probably goes before 10, and then you probably have to pick the best player available, which is going to be receiver. Another need receiver, which doesn't make sense. But David, then, so what happens at 35 then to continue the nightmare draft?
I mean, I think when you get to the second round, there aren't too many nightmares because it's not the premium position that 4 and 10 are. So. I mean, second round
nightmares. I think there's a guy called Christian Hackenberg who basically.
Yeah, but I mean that was so outlandish. I mean that was like fantasy.
That wouldn't be realistic. Before the draft, you say that's not realistic.
So I mean, if you go in that unrealistic, any quarterback at the top of the second round is a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah.
Just offhand, I wouldn't like to take a running back that early. So let's just say, I don't know, Kenneth Walker, because he's probably the highest rated running back in the draft. I wouldn't like to take a running back at the top of the second.
Yep.
We saw with Michael Carter the kind of value you can get in the fourth. The kind of complement to Carter that the Jets are looking for doesn't tend to go early in the draft. You can get some of those bigger guys, some more physical runners in the fourth, fifth round. So, I'd say, Trevor Penning at any point is a nightmare for me. So I'll just say that. I just don't think he's a first round talent. I still wouldn't take him in second.
That's what I was going to go. Is I don't really like the value I don't really like the value of the guys in that range at the offensive line. So Trevor Penning being one of them, and I think they're decent players. Could work out, could be wrong, but I like the value almost. I think the top guys are pretty good, but I don't want to go there. And I think there's guys later on that are good. I just like the value. I don't think is right for me compared to other positions that we actually need, like linebacker, safety, and I think to go an offensive. So if you say take running back at 35 and we go an offensive lineman at 38, I think the one guy that you mentioned is obviously Abraham Lucas. Maybe is a guy that you could say is good value there potentially. I know there's a guy you liked, David. But I still think that there's other positions that you want to fill with those needs.
Joe, I had to go back and look at him after you sent me that message from Brandon Thorne the other day that's basically saying Abraham Lucas sucks. I was kind of like, what?
Oh yeah.
What? Really? So I went back and looked at him. I'm like, I'm going to disagree with Brandon Thorne on that one. I think he's good. I think he's a good prospect.
Okay, but I think the idea is the same, right? Is taking someone at that point when we've got so many other needs that haven't been addressed.
But I think if you went, let's just say Derek Stingley, Drake London, Kenneth Walker, I'd be like, oh man, how has this happened?
We have got to a nightmare scenario somehow between the four of us, haven't we?
And do you think Smith from Tulsa goes round one, or do you think it's even him at 35 would still be a nightmare?
Tyler Smith.
Yeah,
I'd be all over him at 35. I wouldn't be opposed to that.
Yeah, I think he's probably goes to in the end of the. I've seen him going so much to the end. Those teams at the end of the first a lot. So I haven't seen him drop to 35 a lot.
If there's a run of tackles, the Bengals should take Tyler Smith and not even think twice, and then.
Yeah. So I think that's I wouldn't be happy.
Waiting for Zach Tom. That's what I'm waiting for. I'll wait for Zach Tom.
Well, the thing is, Zach Tom added to this quartet would be like, okay, well, there's a little bit of sugar on a pile of shit, So I think let's move over to the dream scenario. So the dream one is Walker. Actually does get taken first, which we think there's a lot of buzz going on. We'll see what happens on Thursday night. But Trayvon Walker goes number 1, which leads to Adrian Hutchinson going number 2, and Aquanu goes number 3. I think that's a lot of people saying they're going to go offensive tackle in Houston. So we'll go with that with Aquanu. I'll kick it off nice and easy for myself. It's KT at 4. That's a dream for us. I think we're all pretty lockstep in terms of wanting KT at 4, and I'll pretty keep it like that and move it to you, David, at 10. What's the dream scenario going on to 10?
Yeah, if you get KT at 4, I think you get that wide receiver at 10. I'm looking at Garrett Wilson. I think me and Andrew both align. We both like Olave a lot.
Love me some Chris Olave.
Yeah, I mean a lot. I'm quite happy with Wilson, Olave, and if not those two, then Jameson Williams. I quite like Jameson Williams. I like Joe Douglas said about the pressure bursting the pipes, and Jameson Williams' speed is a lot of pressure in those pipes. So I'd be happy with all three of those guys. So, but I'll go Wilson just because he's my wide receiver 1. So I'm going to go with Wilson.
I think we're all pretty happy with Wilson, generally. I think he's the guy who we may have difference on some other people, but I think Wilson's one of the ones who's up there, 1 or 2. He's up there, guy. So Andrew, going off that, so that's KT and Wilson at 4 and 10. What's the dream scenario if you stay pat and you're not aggressive like you said earlier, but you stay pat at 35? What's the dream scenario realistically of something that could happen at 35?
Well, the dream scenario is Lewis Cine falls to 35 and we don't have to trade up. Yeah. And there you go. There's your answer right there. Is hope that somehow he makes it out of the first round and makes it out of the aggressive trade offers at the start of the second round and makes his way to 35. I would be sprinting that card in.
It would be very exciting times. It would be like last year when we, you saw the amount of talent that was still there at the when we started day 2 and we're so near the top again. That it's exciting to kind of see who they landed. Matt, so that's that's a pretty good trio there. What's the quartet? How do you finish this off?
Yeah,
with
well, it makes it easier for me because I was going to say safety as well, because I think you can get if you get one of Daxton Hill, Brisker, Scene, any one of those makes the Jets instantly better, and like that is kind of it feels like the sweet spot for safeties. I mean, they're kind of rumblings. They could go back half of round one, so you kind of take whoever's left and you're immediately upgrading that position. I think 38, there's been some rumblings. Could Nakobe Dean maybe last that long? If you can get him there, that's a dream. Could you play a higher upside pick? And we haven't seen the Jets really add anybody to the wide receivers room. So if they added a George Pickens, a Christian Watson, you can play that high upside dream and get two bodies in there, and then immediately you're making that room bigger. You're making it taller. Particularly you go someone like Garrett Wilson in the first, and then you kind of get that big body threat in the second. But I think choosing between those two, I think taking someone like Nakobe Dean for this defense at 38, if he manages to get that way, and I think it'd be criminal if Nakobe Dean makes it to 38. But there's been mock drafts where he's done that, so I'm gonna say Nakobe Dean at 38.
I mean, that is honestly, I don't want to speak for those, but I mean, if you looked at that, if you say KT, Wilson, Scene, and Nakobe Dean, and with those two teammates as well, and then those two Georgia teammates coming in, I mean, that is just a fantastic start. And then all the rest of it is, there's still some great stuff later on in the draft, but I think that is a very exciting prospect, and I think it's realistic. I don't think anything we've listed is unrealistic. I think that, you have a few hopes and wishes, but I've seen enough evidence that you're not saying, we want Jameson Williams to fall to 35. It's nothing silly like that. It's obviously I think stuff that could happen. So yeah, I think that's some interesting, just a quick hit of two scenarios that we could end up with that are probably equally realistic, and hopefully they take the latter route more than the previous. I think that depends on the Jags, and let's hope the Jags jag it up and take Trayvon Walker, and then everything I think else falls into place a little bit nicely. So yeah, I think for that we'll kick off into our draft predictions. Okay, so for our draft predictions, we're just going to roll through a couple of predictions each that we've got for the draft. So I'll kick it off with, I've got a feeling that there's going to be two QBs taken in the top 10. I think that you've got teams like Carolina that may take them in that position, even though it's, this is all over drafting. I don't think these guys are worth it, but QBs are QBs, and this is what happens. And then I think maybe someone trades up back, into the top 10 to take another guy as well. Just QBs get pushed up all the time, and I think it's no different this year. David, what's your first prediction?
So my first prediction is that Trayvon Walker is going to go number 1 overall to the Jags. And the basis for this prediction is it's the Jags. And that is the extent of what I've got.
So that's kicking off our dream scenario from the last segment. Yeah?
Exactly. I'm speaking it into existence. That's what I'm doing. I'm just thinking, Trayvon Walker does have immense athletic upside.
Yeah.
And I think some teams get enamored with that kind of thing over production. There's a little bit of question about how Georgia used him, and in the NFL, if you used him better, then you'll get more production out of him. So, I'm going to go Trayvon Walker goes number 1 overall, which leads to KT being on the Jets.
It's great. Andrew, what's your first prediction?
Well, I hope David's right. That would be pretty great for us. But my first prediction is that the New Orleans Saints are going to trade the 16th and the 19th picks plus, let me get my official listing here, 16, 19, and pick 120 for the 7th overall pick from the New York Giants, and they're going to take Malik Willis.
Well, then that ties in with mine, because then that's probably the second QB that might be taken potentially. Yeah. So that I think that Giants, I think that slot is quite an interesting one when you look at it. I think the Giants will get their first pick they want at 5, and then they've been said they want to trade back, and I think that's a natural spot because in between the two. It's in between the two NFC South rivals for the Saints. So it's the only really trade partner they can have it in those 3 picks. So I think it's an interesting proposition. I think that could happen. Matt, what's your first prediction for the...
My prediction is a player who we've all liked for a while now, and I was working out how bold to be with this number. It's Zion Johnson will go top, and then I'm toying with the number here.
Right.
Because it's how bold do I want to go, and I'm going to I'm gonna live by the sword and die by the sword, and I'm gonna say Zion Johnson goes top 13.
Okay.
So I think Houston Texans' second first round pick would be his floor, although I could easily see Minnesota taking him, kind of building out the interior of that offensive line. I think he's a prospect that's just so safe, such a high floor, so consistent, so good, kind of just in a similar way to Vera Tucker was last year. You know what you're getting, and you're getting 10 plus years of top level guard play if you draft him. And I think that's going to be in a draft where you can't really hit as many home run hits. Someone's going to look for that high floor and consistency that he offers.
Right. Yeah, no, I think Zion Johnson will definitely. It would have to be a landing spot. I think his floor is what 23 to the Cardinals. I think I always see him kind of there. Maybe it's a team for him. So I think anywhere between that, you can see it. He's definitely a safe prospect, and some people may value that in this year's draft where there isn't as many clear cut safe players. My second prediction, there'll be a tight end taken in round 1. Probably near the end, but I've just got a feeling that someone who just wants to kind of add to the receiving weapons is going to add a tight end. It could be a KC bringing someone in to kind of to pair up with Kelsey as he kind of goes into the later part of his career, someone like that. So a later round of round 1, tight end taken, maybe probably McBride or Dolchich, or it could be anyone. Everyone's got their own kind of people that they like as well. David, what's your second prediction for the draft?
So kind of along the same lines as Andrew's first one, and we did do this independently before actually coming on here. So I've got the Saints trading up, similar package, but not for Malik Willis, but for Matt Corral from Ole Miss. And the reason I've kind of got it is he's got a tremendous amount of talent, and he's kind of improved every year. And this year he cut down his interceptions, and I think that was quite a big factor in him, being a little bit lower. And he kind of learned when to kind of vacate the pocket a little bit better. When I was watching him last year, his first instinct was to run, and that wasn't ideal for most teams in the NFL. Your first instinct to run. This year, he's done a little bit better in knowing when to stay in, when to run. He hasn't got the arm talent, but I think in New Orleans, you could get away with that a little bit more than, say, if he went to Chicago or if he went up to Buffalo or obviously to New York where there's colder weather. So it's a little bit of a bold prediction because I personally don't have Matt Corral as my top quarterback or in my second one, but I just got a feeling the Saints, someone's going to fall in love with him. He's that kind of character. He's that kind of personality. I can imagine him interviewing quite well. So I'm going to go with the Saints trading up for him.
It's interesting. There's not as much buzz on him, in terms of that top round, but I don't think he's any worse prospect as any of the other guys, So it could be interesting if someone has a particularly a like for him. They could definitely jump at that for sure. Andrew, what's your next prediction for the draft?
Yeah, I'll be a little bold here. This may be against consensus, but it is something I legitimately do feel pretty confident about and something that I do actually expect to happen come draft day. I think Chris Olave is going to go ahead of Drake London because I think Drake London, his injury history it deserves to be questioned, considering he's not going to run a 40 at all before the draft, and the only workouts he's done has been some makeup pro day field work. We have to question his health, question his ability to separate and have vertical speed to threaten defenses. And I think teams are going to look at Chris Olave and see a polished, explosive, crafty technician, and they're going to fall in love with him. And I think he's going to go a lot higher than people think.
Yeah, Chris Olave is Justin Jefferson, isn't he? Where the flavor of the month gets overthought, and people like the hot, sexy new thing, and they kind of just forget to really appreciate what he offers. And someone's going to get a. You could even argue if Olave goes in like the 18 to 22 range, that's a steal. That's where Justin Jefferson went, and he should have been
major steal. And guys like Laquan Treadwell and Josh Doxson, and there was I'm trying to think of the others in that draft class. There was another contested catch guy, but there's been other receivers that have similar play styles to Drake London that have gone early and then completely flamed out, while guys like a Justin Jefferson go later and end up being really, really good. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah, Laquan Treadwell brings me back nightmares because he is probably my biggest draft miss of all time. I was convinced he was Calvin Johnson 2.0. didn't
I think
quite
a lot
pan
of
out
people.
that
I
way.
don't think you're on your own on that one. To be fair, Matt. I think a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
didn't
it-
quite
Yeah, I
see
wasn't
that,
quite
yeah.
there on him. Yeah.
No, I didn't like him that much. But kind of look at what the NFL's doing as well. And look at some of the receivers having so much production in the NFL, like Devontae Adams, and even guys like Hunter Renfrow. You know, route running gets you a lot in the NFL. It gets you it's one of the safest floors to have in terms of an individual skill set is to be able to run routes effectively and gain separation just from your natural ability to run clean routes. And that's what we've seen with guys like Hunter Renfrow who run some spectacular routes and they get open and they get found. So
Yeah.
it's safer. And I do think Drake London's kind of got this massive hype train behind him. He is that sexy pick this year that a lot of people have fallen in love with, and I'm not convinced.
Well, Matt, what's your to wrap it up? What's your second prediction for the draft?
I'm gonna throw out no running backs in the top 50. I think just we won't see a single running back go till halfway through the second round, and I think that there's two reasons for that. There's this kind of gradual consensus away from taking running backs high. I mean, we saw last season Najee was probably worth it, but Travis was kind of like the injury risk is always there with a running back, even though he ended up playing slot wide receiver under Urban briefly. And I just think the way the NFL's going in terms of how it's been played on the field, where you kind of want pass protection, pass catching, all of these different elements, to take one of these guys, whether it's Walker, Hall, Spiller, in the top 50, I just don't think you're getting that complete rounded game that you're really looking for out of a running back that early. And I think the kind of results in year one between taking a Spiller in round 2 or a Algier in round 4 are going to be very comparable, and it's going to be offensive line based more than what those individual players are actually adding to your roster.
Yeah, I think you're right. I do think there's maybe one team that might, and I think Buffalo may be a shot to go first round and just say let's take the one we want. But I think they've got some other needs as well. So I definitely think that's a realistic prediction that could come to fruition for sure.
Buffalo have to go corner with that first.
I do think so too. But I think I think they should go corner and then maybe take a decent running back in the second for them. But I don't care about them. They're Buffalo and they're good enough. And we got enough worries with our team to worry about what Buffalo need to do. But yeah, that kind of wraps up our kind of draft preview extravaganza. It's kind of we are here now. You'll be listening to this it's less than 3 days, within 3 days of the draft, and whenever you do listen to it. Yeah, we are almost there. So, David, before we get to now that we're here now, is there anything you want to say to listeners before we head off to the post-draft narrative after the next time we'll be listening to people after the draft?
Oh man, I don't know. Just keep the narratives in check. I think don't get too concerned. Don't worry too much if they don't get the guy you want. I mean, I'm going to be crying when they don't take Cole Strange. I know that. I'll be emotional come Saturday, Sunday. So yeah, just enjoy it, man. I mean, we talk about this for months and months and months, and it's easy to get too caught up in it. Just enjoy the occasion, enjoy the atmosphere, enjoy the Jets going to work, and let's hope on Monday, Tuesday next week we can all sit here and say the Jets are a much better team than they were this time.
Yeah, that's for sure. Matt, anything you want to say?
Get your sleep in Tuesday and Wednesday night. It's so important. You get a good 8 hours on Tuesday and Wednesday, because those 2 late nights on Friday and Saturday, they're pretty, on Thursday and Friday even, they're pretty brutal. So rest up. Make sure you're well stocked up on chicken, chips, crisps, whatever you need to get it through. I'm going to be ordering a fried chicken burger, chicken wings, chips on Thursday. So
nice.
That's the way to do it.
And that is very UK based advice, Andrew, for our clients who have to. Basically, it's a 1 o'clock start for us. It's 1 o'clock in the morning the draft starts, and we stay up for that stuff because we are absolutely crazy. Andrew, is there anything you want to say to listeners in terms of the Jets mentality, for Jets fans to listen to before we head into the draft?
It's not often that I get to say this, and there's been a lot of years that I have not felt this way. So the fact that I feel this way now, I definitely think we should all cherish that. And that is the fact that I am confident in the people running our organization to make confident and smart decisions. I'm not worried that Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh don't know what they're doing. I'm not worried that we're having to dance around Mike McCagnon's moves and hope he doesn't overspend or hope he makes the right draft pick or doesn't get cute or take some 27-year-old pass rusher with a criminal history and no bend, things like that we don't have to worry about.
Yeah.
I'm very happy about that, and I like being able to go into the draft knowing the Jets have this ammo, knowing they have defined needs and a plan, and saying, I trust our general manager and head coach to find guys that are going to fit and do work. So I enjoy the process now that we're confident that we have people running the show that know what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. It can definitely feels like a different environment, a different people running the team. We felt that way for a while. I think last year's draft was an illustration of that, and let's hope it continues. And we're not scratching our heads at the end of at the end of the draft. But I do believe that you're right. I think there's some good people going to do some good work on the weekend and getting the Jets to be an improved team. So that's basically our message to you guys for the week. We've got a couple of events. Obviously, we've got David's going to be doing his writing on the Jets way. Andrew, you continue to do your Oklahoma Drill podcast and also your work on Jets X Factor. Is there anything specifically you want to say for this week?
Yeah. So if you guys want to keep an eye out over this week, by the time you're listening to this, the latest Oklahoma drill should be out. We just finished up our position previews of every position in the draft class. We did linebackers, corners, and safeties the other day, and we got that wrapped up. All the other positions are available as well. And then my final mock draft of the year will be coming out Thursday morning before the draft. So we were getting ready for all the final first round picks. Had a okay track record last year. Had a couple of surprise picks that not many people had that I had in. Didn't know many other people that had Greg Rousseau to Buffalo, so I'm standing on that hill. Just to keep an eye out for that, and we're all excited for Thursday night. It's going to be a fun time.
Absolutely. So we will we'll be back on Friday to wrap up the kind of events of day one. We will. So just get ready for it. We're a few days away. We hope you can enjoy Thursday night or the Thursday morning if you're in the UK, or Friday morning, I should say. And we will catch you after round one.